Politicians are masters of the art of deception. Martin L. Gross, journalist, social scientist, and author. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. Let's get that banner removed there. There we go. Messing up the program here. All right, today we're going to talk about RFK. The news hit yesterday that he might be dropping out and might even be endorsing Trump. So let's get right in and see exactly where that came from. It comes from a podcast that his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, was on. So let's play that clip and let's see what we come up with.
What my gut tells me right now is that we just have to keep being honest. I got to just keep being honest. I got to keep focusing on what matters the most outside of party lines. I need to focus on a vision that goes beyond November. And if that means that we stay in and, there's benefits to staying in. If we get over 5% of the vote, we actually establish ourselves as a party. 71% of Americans want a strong third party.
Now it's interesting that she says that and everybody says that. And then nobody really talks about the Libertarian Party that has existed since 1971. And I believe that we're having some ballot access issues this year around. I think the last 3 cycles, I think it was 3 or so, we've had full 50 state ballot access. But we are a strong third party in terms of as third parties go. And several attempts in the last couple of years have been made to kind of like splinter off and create a new one. And they just haven't gotten the momentum. And they had, some of them were libertarians. You had Andrew Yang. He tried, what was it? The Forward Party. Like there were attempts. And the reason that these attempts don't go so well is because it's a very uphill battle, one that the Libertarian Party has been fighting for decades, many decades. So hopefully Americans are starting to get the picture that the big two are primarily responsible for the lack of third party. Like if such a high percentage of Americans would like a third party, the first thing that they need to recognize is how difficult it is to be a third party. And I don't mean difficult because, a lot of people really want to support the Democrats or people really want to support the Republicans when it comes down to the wire. Not difficult because libertarians are ornery, not difficult because there's just not a lot of money there. Those all exist as well. But a large part of that the difficultness is in the fact that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party put in a lot of effort to ensure that it's more difficult. I just had on my podcast the other day, Larry Sharp, who ran for governor in New York, and they literally got him taken off the ballot, right? Like we've had ballot access fights because of the two parties, Republicans and Democrats, both of them. And if you look up the news, just go Google, Democrat, Republican, Libertarian Party sued ballot, something like that. Go type in some of those keywords and you're going to find stories. If you go back, you'll find stories. Now, not all of them are necessarily national level, but some of them are state level. But you'll find stories where they have explicitly used lawfare against the potential, the strongest potential third party. So she's correct that people do want it, but the real question is, how bad do they want it? You want to talk about it in a poll? Okay, great. You kind of sort of want it. Like taking a poll has has some level of measure. But if you don't do anything about all of this nonsense that's happening, then you don't really want it. All right. I didn't mean to go on a tirade there. Let's continue on.
with a real shot at winning. Um, there's even public funds available if we get over 5% of the vote. So we could get, I think it's like $13.5 million in public funds to keep the party going. And that's, that's worth something. That means that we can position for a real third party election in 2028 where we don't have to go around and spend tens of millions of dollars on ballot access.
See, so she gets it. Ballot access is an uphill battle for them, because they're new, and it's an uphill battle for anybody that's not the big two. Now, I want to point out, and we'll talk more about this in a moment, that the Libertarian Party, the LNC, got into an agreement with the RFK campaign, as did several states. Florida was one of them. We rescinded that agreement just Sunday night. But whatever you think of those agreements, I just want to point out that while she keeps talking about America having a strong third party and the difficulties of ballot access, and while their team has kind of utilized the benefit that our party has, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, then just briefly, what the campaign did was they reached out to the LNC, the Libertarian Party, and they said, "Hey, you're an official party. You have a particular limit that's much higher than the limit I have for donors. So a donor who might, I don't remember the specific numbers, but a donor who might want to, give the maximum amount or a certain amount would be limited because RFK is not with like a full on party. And so because he's running as independent." And so he said, "Well, there's this entity that we can create legally that would allow my supporters to utilize your maximum allowable donations, which allows me to get more. And if you join with me, then I'm going to give you a cut 10%. Okay. Now, regardless of what you think of that idea, I just want to point out that as much as she keeps talking about having a strong third party, nowhere have I heard any suggestion that they would back our candidate or that they would join forces with our party. They just kind of wanted to tap in and use us like a dirty dish rag so that they could get more money and hopefully fight the establishment. Maybe. Or maybe they are the establishment and they're just not willing to admit it. I don't know. But let's keep going. I just wanted to point that out, that they keep talking a good game about third parties, and they've done the least amount possible to work with the current strongest third party in the United States.
Which means that we can spend all of that time and money campaigning. So, there's two options that we're looking at. And one is staying in, forming that new party, but we run the risk of a Kamala Harris and Waltz uh, presidency because we draw votes from Trump, or we draw somehow more votes from Trump, or we walk away right now and join forces with Donald Trump, and we walk away from that and we explain to our base why we're making this decision. Not easy.
Clearly.
Yeah, not an easy decision.
Now,
Okay, so that was the end of that clip there. The link to the whole episode is in the show notes. There's some interesting things in there. Some things that even libertarians would appreciate. She talks about Austrian economics, gold standard, some of those other things. So there's some interesting stuff in there. By no means am I promoting them necessarily, but it was an interesting conversation. So I encourage you to check it out. Let's continue on. So that's what she said. Now I want to get a couple comments in here real quick before I lose sight of them while they're still here making sense in the context of what I'm talking about now. I've got to say, Oddsman says, I've got to say, if they drop out, I doubt they will. it'll serve certain sore loser libertarians right, along with our embarrassing national LP chair. The party chose Chase. Now, I'm not going to talk trash about our chair or any other, but if they do drop out, and I kind of share, I'll talk about whether I'm how confident I am that in just a moment. But if they do drop out, then I think it will serve, like you said, certain sore loser libertarians, or you can just call them libertarians. Um, I think it's going to be an interesting. I'm trying to think of how to say what I want to say without diving into the what I've got to talk about later. But maybe I'll just kind of reiterate it a little bit here. I think there's some good things that'll happen, and I think there's some bad things. I think the biggest in this context, the biggest issue would be that it may galvanize those who support the libertarians who support Trump and the libertarians who support RFK to kind of join forces and be more antagonistic toward our own candidate. So that's one of the things that I think is possible if they happen to drop out. So let's continue on. I did have one other comment here. So let's see here what we got. All right. So up on the screen there, that Liberty lady, Larry Sharp, called it with RFK. Democrats are pissed. He left the party. So that's why Kamala won't respond to RFK. In their eyes, he's a traitor. So that why they are fighting him hard with boy, I cannot read today. Holy moly. Somebody did something to my Cheerios. I don't actually eat Cheerios, folks. All right. In their eyes, he's a traitor. So that's why they are fighting him hard with ballot access. I finally got it out, folks. I can talk today, I promise. Yes, they are fighting him hard. I believe he lost New York, and I believe there's a couple of other states where he doesn't have it as well. I think there's like 2 or 3 states. I actually have a map. We will show that in just a moment. Did want to address the comments, just kind of keeping up with them. People tend to get a little antsy when I don't respond to comments necessarily. Had somebody yell at me the other day. So try to make sure that we get a hold of them. So I want to show you what the media reported because I thought this was kind of interesting. This is a 3-minute NBC clip. I'll stop it periodically and chime in as I have something to say. But here we go. Let's see.
Former President Trump is talking about something on CNN specifically related to Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I'd like to ask both of you to stand by for a second. We just cut the clip. We just turned it around. I want to play it here.
Have you considered him for a role in the administration, and what role would that be?
Well, we haven't, but I would love that endorsement because I've always liked him.
Would you also consider putting him in the administration?
You're asking me a very unusual question. I haven't been asked that question yet. I like him a lot. I respect him a lot. I probably would if something like that would happen.
Okay, so I think this makes the idea of them dropping out even stronger. Because if you hint and say, hey, we might need to drop out and support Trump, and then Trump comes out and speaks positively and says, yeah, you know what? Like on the spur of the moment, I might be willing to put you in, my cabinet or, give you a position. Well, as you heard, she said, we have to think about the long term. And I think it's been pretty clear that RFK in some ways is your run-of-the-mill politician. He's doing whatever he can to win and advance his agenda. And I think he would be willing to, I mean, a while back, he suggested, this was before they selected Kamala Harris, he suggested that if the Democratic Party wanted to reconsider him, that it was on the table, right? So he suggested he would be willing to go back to the Democratic Party. He's now his running mate has now suggested that he would be willing to work with and support the Trump campaign. And then Trump now is like, well, I like him, and there could very well be a spot for Bobby here on my team, right? And then in a Twitter post, this is what he said. Where did let me get this Twitter post pulled up. I think I've a little bit forgot about this one, but give me just a second and I will get this taken care of. Boom, bada bing. There we go. All right. So let's cut over to that real quick. There we go. All right. So he says, as always, I'm willing to talk with leaders of any political party to further the goals I have served for 40 years in my career and in this campaign. These are reversing the chronic disease epidemic, ending the war machine, cleaning corporate influence out of government and toxic pollution out of the environment, protecting freedom of speech, and ending politicization of enforcement agencies. A lot of things that the Libertarian Party would actually support. I don't know that we would support his his environmental goals, but most of the rest, I believe we would support, depending how he would want to achieve it. So if he wanted to put a bunch of regulation into place, then maybe not so much. But if he wanted to start cutting some regulation or cutting some of these agencies or diverting power as they currently have it, I think the Libertarian Party would support this. However, he seems to be like, I'll talk with anybody, but we don't see any hint that, hey, maybe I'll go support the Libertarian Party. And that's because, again, I think we're being used, period. I think that's what it amounts to. So that's what the media is currently saying. But let's continue listening. And the clip let's hope it doesn't, let's see if I can't fix that so it doesn't restart, but we might have to. Of course it did.
Former President Trump.
Oh, back it up. There we go.
Respect him a lot. I probably would if something like that would happen.
Explain, Alex Seitzwald, who's joining us now here on set, why this is even coming up as a possibility. RFK Jr.'s running mate basically floated this today and said, and I'm paraphrasing here, if the goods are good enough, right, if there's a deal that's good enough, RFK Jr. might consider dropping out and backing Mr. Trump.
Yeah, these are some truly remarkable comments from Nicole Shanahan on this podcast, where she basically acknowledged that they have no real path to victory at this point. She's spoken past tense about the campaign, said they do not want to help Kamala Harris get elected in any way, and they would work with Donald Trump, which is, of course, what Democrats have been accusing Kennedy of doing this entire time, and they've adamantly denied. But now that the campaign is kind of coming to the end of the road, they're looking at some kind of offer. And I spoke to some Kennedy supporters this afternoon about those comments, and one that really stood out to me was this guy, Kyle Kemper, who's been driving across the country in a bus that he made himself with Kennedy's face on the side, and he was furious at the idea of Kennedy working with Trump. He said it would be a deal with the devil. He shouldn't be trusted, and that it would betray the whole ethos of the campaign, which is about independence and breaking the two-party system.
That's weird. I believe that certain elements of the Libertarian Party made similar arguments. Now, how weird is that? That you've got this guy who is a notable figure supporting RFK, and he's come out and he's like, dude, it's a deal with the devil. Don't trust him. You know, you're betraying our efforts to fight the two-party system, which holds people down, does what it wants. And the Libertarian Party has effectively been the same. I mean, our goal isn't necessarily to fight the two-party system, but en route to expanding liberty, we must fight the two-party system. So I think it's interesting that, you know, a lot of the diehards for the third parties are saying no deal, and then you have others who will come out, because there are plenty of libertarians that are like, oh, we should totally support Trump because he's, you know, and they'll give you all their reasons, but in reality, they're just supporting the two-party system. And likewise, here in the RFK, and on Team RFK, you've got some figures who are like, absolutely not, bad idea. Well, I agree, Mr. Is his name Kemper?
Garrett, we heard former President Trump in that interview suggest that he would love RFK Jr.'s endorsement. Probably more newsy if he said he didn't want the endorsement. Of course he would, right?
I think, Hallie, but I've been playing this out in my head all day today, and I actually think I could make the argument that Kennedy's more useful in the race to Donald Trump as a third-party candidate, as a vote sink for people who don't like Kamala Harris and don't particularly like him than he is as just another endorser. As Alex was just pointing out, I'm not convinced that Kennedy's endorsement brings all that many of Kennedy's voters to Trump. The idea that he can be out there for people who, you know, the double haters in the previous consideration of this race when Joe Biden was still in it, but I think it still exists. People who just burned out on the two-party system. You know, if that lowers Kamala Harris's vote totals in any number of places by some significant measure, isn't that more useful than another endorsement from someone who can be used against you just as well as he can be used for you?
Garrett Haake, thank you very much. Alex, on this whole issue, it came up because of somebody we haven't seen a ton of on the campaign trail, and that's Nicole Shanahan, RFK Jr.'s running mate.
Yeah, she has been basically absent since she was announced on very few events. I mean, the whole campaign has gone kind of dark in a while. And I think this podcast interview was an explanation of why we have not seen a lot about her, because she said a lot of things that I don't think the campaign would have liked her to divulge. And basically saying the campaign is over. She said the Democrats made us a spoiler. Clearly very, very upset, very resentful of the Democratic Party, which she was a member of for years, said her biggest regret in life was supporting Chuck Schumer and giving him money to help the Democratic Senate turn.
So I want to pause for a moment. I'm not sure. I mean, this sounds more like media spin to me. I'm not really convinced that she explicitly made it out like, hey, the campaign is over, like he's suggesting. I think what she's doing is saying, hey, we have to make some choices. And how hard is the fight to get that 5%, to get, you know, to a place where we can have an impact like we want. And so I think that's what she's saying. She's saying, like, look, we are at a crossroad. You've got this uphill battle, and then you have this alternative, which comes with its own challenges. You know, like they have to go and talk to their supporters and say, hey, this is why we're doing this. Now, it could all be bluff. It could be serious. You know, it's really hard to say. But I think it's enough of that video. We can move on. So I want to give you some thoughts in terms of like the good and the bad. And I kind of alluded to these a moment ago. You know, number one, on the good side, you're going to get more attention to the Chase and Mike Tremont campaign, because we would then become the only major third party, if you will, right? Because right now RFK is sucking the oxygen out of the room because he's got millions of dollars and he's got name recognition. So even though he's a third party, he's not obscure. He's somebody that pretty much everybody recognizes the name Kennedy. And if you don't recognize the name Kennedy, well, he has the money to help remind you who he is, right? Like he can put out ads and he can, you know, reach out and do all these different things that they're doing because they have tons of money. Another good thing is I think this would make, and libertarians can be mad at me, this will make, if he drops out, this would make the Chase Oliver, Mike Tremont campaign they would give them a better opportunity to be the spoiler potentially. Because right now, because RFK is going to be sucking the oxygen out of the room, if there is a spoiler, in other words, if the vote totals between Harris and Trump are so close that the spread of RFK kind of covers them, then what that means is whoever wins can say, you know, hey, or whoever loses can say RFK caused me to lose. They spoiled my race. And so I know that libertarians don't like the idea of being a spoiler, and it's true. Our goal is actually to beat both the Republican and Democrat candidates in any race that we're in. However, in many cases, we really cannot beat both. So we have our best opportunity is to beat one. So therefore, take it and run with it. And it's not always the same one. Sometimes it's the Democrat, sometimes it's the Republican. I think in this particular case, Chase, because of some of his positions, because of the perception of him, I think he has a better chance of being a spoiler in favor of Donald Trump. So if people are unhappy with Harris, then they can vote for Chase Oliver. Now, and that's more about perception than it is in reality. Because when you look at his positions, like his policy positions do fall squarely within the range of libertarian, right? So, like, it's not like he's an actual Democrat. He formerly was. And if you go back and you look at some of his material, he points out that the reason he was a Democrat was at the time they were the anti-war party. So he came along as an anti-war activist. And so he picked which party was more anti-war, and that was the Democratic Party. And then when they stopped being anti-war and he started realizing that, hey, the Libertarian Party is anti-war, then he joined the Libertarian Party. So I think there's an opportunity for him to be a spoiler in that if they drop out. The third good thing is that it would actually increase his vote percentage, I think. Now, how much? That's a tough one. But I think it would, because if RFK drops out and supports Trump, there will be some people who are unwilling to support Trump. And since some of his policy positions do line up with libertarian positions, I think there's an opportunity for the Chase Oliver campaign to grab some of those voters. Also, because it would then be between Harris and Trump, and there wouldn't be an RFK as a third person, as a protest vote, then anybody wanting to give a protest vote, and there may even, you might even see more at that point, but anybody wanting to give a protest vote would then fall to Chase Oliver, more than likely. So I think there's an opportunity for his vote percentage to go, which is really a good thing, because at this particular time, with these four candidates, with Harris, Trump, RFK, and Chase Oliver's numbers are destined to be very, very small. And that's going to be a very difficult pill for the Libertarian Party members to swallow. Many of them will simply blame it on Chase, his policies, some of the things that, we're not too particularly keen on. But I think the real truth is that he is destined to get a very low percentage, explicitly because there's an RFK who has tons of money and, more importantly, has wide name recognition across the United States. So I think that's the bigger issue. All right. So what are the bad things? Well, this may galvanize more Chase opposition from libertarians, because now because you already have libertarians who are supporting Trump and you have libertarians who are supporting RFK. So if they join forces, well, then that kind of makes those two groups siblings in a sense. And so now they will have every reason to pick on those who will say, no, I'm still supporting Chase. And they can come and say, hey, now we're together. Now it's not just libertarians who support Trump and libertarians who support RFK. It's now all in one bag. Libertarians support Trump, and you guys are being the odd person out by doing this. So I think that will create more oppositions internally, and we may have a little bit more fighting. The other thing that's, I think, is bad is that the media may no longer discuss third parties. They have no choice right now but to talk about RFK. He's too big and he's too widely known to ignore. You can't, I mean, they could try, but I don't think it's going to work. So they can't ignore RFK, but the media is very, very good at ignoring the Libertarian Party. I mean, I've seen articles where they say a third party candidate rather than like saying the Libertarian Party candidate, right? Like they are very good and clever when it comes to ignoring the Libertarian Party. So I think that's a bad thing that may happen. It's hard to say what other good and bad things, but in my mind, I think there are plenty of opportunities. So I think this would be a good thing for the Libertarian Party. And then we could figure out where it goes from there, right? Like, I think there's an opportunity here, and I think it's a good one. That's my opinion, but who knows? All right, so let's take a little bit of an intermission here. I want to play this video clip. This is of Erica Kolenich, who I interviewed on my podcast. You can go look up. I don't remember the episode number, but I interviewed her. She is running for governor of West Virginia. So here is that video.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from West Virginia. I was born in Ohio. been raised in West Virginia the majority of my life. I was convinced, like a lot of people in West Virginia, that I was going to grow up and go somewhere and do bigger and better things. So I went to West Virginia Wesleyan here in Buchanan, and I left after that and went to the University of Akron School of Law in Ohio. Didn't really take long for me living outside of West Virginia to know I wanted to come back. So I came back here to Buchanan in 2010 with my husband, Carl, who was originally from Cleveland. And this is where we've raised our daughter, Iris. Iris is 19. She's a sophomore at Wesleyan. I started my own law practice here in West Virginia. I have around 10 employees. I come from a long line of small business owners. My parents have always had small businesses. That's what I grew up with, and that's what I've come to know. In my personal life, I'm very different than in my business life. In my business life, I'm very serious because I have to be. In my personal life, I'm pretty laid back. I stay pretty active. I go to the gym every day. I work out all the time. I spend almost every waking hour I have that I'm not at work volunteering for different community organizations. Small towns are my passion, I guess. They really mean a lot to me. So I spend a lot of time here in my small town, devoting my time to different organizations. For as long as I can remember, we've been here in West Virginia on the top of every bad list and the bottom of every good list. We've been told since we were children, you have to leave the state. There's nothing for you here. There's no jobs for you here. We're told there's no culture here. There's no art here. There's no diversity here. We have been indoctrinated to think that we need to get all these things, jobs, culture, either by leaving or somehow importing them. And that is not true. We have to change the narrative to make people understand everything that we need to succeed is already here in West Virginia. Everything that we need to have an economy like no other is here in West Virginia. Everything that we need to keep young people here and to create cultural opportunity is here in West Virginia. Everything that we need to live life the best way that we know how is here in West Virginia. We just need the right person to harness that and introduce us to our opportunities. You can continue to vote the same way and get the same results. You can continue to do the same things and not get new solutions. Or you can do something different. If you want change, if you want new solutions, if you want West Virginia to move forward, you have to do something different. Voting Libertarian this year is your opportunity to do something different. It's your opportunity to vote with your conscience. It's your opportunity to say, I'm done with the same thing happening over and over and over again, and I'm ready for something new. I'm ready for change. I offer you the opportunity for that change.
All right, there we go. So if you are in West Virginia and you're not supporting Erica Kalinich, then I highly recommend that you do. You can also check out episode 326, Erica Kalinich for West Virginia Governor. That's where I interviewed her. It was a great interview. I actually really, really enjoyed it. And then just to let you know, put it up on the screen here, you can go to kalinich4wv.com and you can you can support her in any way that you can. So just wanted to let you know. By the way, I am going to be having intermission from now on, where I, put out something. Maybe it's, maybe I'm got an affiliate link or something, that I can promote, or maybe that I've got, some candidates that I want to promote. So if you are a libertarian candidate, and you have some videos, or you know of a libertarian candidate who has some videos, some promo videos like that, let me know. Send me those links so that I can start collecting them, and we can start promoting libertarians on the show along with some other capitalistic ventures. So that's what we got. So again, Kalinich4wv.com. All right. There's another comment here that I wanted to put up on the screen before I move along, and that is Keith says libertarians agreeing on something now. Huh. I know, right? Like, what are the odds of that happening? Probably pretty low. But we can always keep giving it the good old college try. All right. So we're talking about RFK and maybe he's going to drop out and start supporting Trump. So I talked about just a moment ago, like, hey, here's what's going on. Here are my thoughts, the good, the bad. Here's what the media is saying. Trump has suggested that there's a spot for him if he's willing. There's a spot for RFK if RFK is willing to put his support behind Trump and that he likes him. Of course, Trump does. Trump likes anybody that supports him. So that's just basically how Trump operates. So now the question is like, why are they doing this? There's some conspiracies here. So let me talk about a couple of the conspiracies. Number one, maybe maybe this was planned all along. And the reason I say this is because remember I told you the Libertarian Party entered into an agreement with their campaign. So here is their press release from the RFK campaign back in July, on July 19th, so about a month ago. Historic fundraising agreement helps level playing field on individual donations to Kennedy campaign. The Kennedy campaign today announced the Kennedy Victory Fund 2024, an unprecedented partnership with the Libertarian National Committee, revolutionizing how individuals can financially support the campaign by joining forces with the LNC and establishing the Joint Fundraising Committee. Individuals can now donate $41,300 in addition to the general election contribution of $3,300. The Joint Fundraising Committee offers a pathway to raising similar funds to the two establishment parties. In addition to the new threshold per individual, this agreement allows state party committees that meet specific FEC requirements to join the Joint Fundraising Committee. Each state that joins adds an additional $10,000 in donation capacity per individual. And let's see here. This historic collaboration breaks the fundraising stranglehold that the two major parties have on this election, said independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Together, the Kennedy campaign and LNC are democratizing fundraising to make this independent run viable. Now, this got a lot of scorn from libertarians, and rightfully so, because what the deal was is that they would get 90%, our candidate would get 10%. And actually, it wouldn't be our candidate, it would be the LNC. And so one of the things that I pointed out is that the full 90% that goes to RFK is 100% going toward his campaign. Whereas the 10% that the LNC is getting doesn't all go toward the campaign of our candidate, Chase Oliver. So that 10% is going to be spread out between the candidate, ballot access, and whatever other things that they're permitted by FEC regulations to spend it on. So our candidate is getting even less than the 10%. And so what I pointed out was that what they're doing is, they're enabling. Now, we're not technically fundraising for, a lot of people presented it as we're fundraising for we're not fundraising for RFK. What we're doing is allowing them to, we are entering into an agreement so that they could increase the amount of donations that they could accept. And then they would be willing to pay us basically a little fee for helping enable that. So all we're doing is enabling them to get more money, which would be used against our candidate, right? Because he's competing against Chase Oliver. He didn't enter any agreement with the Chase Oliver campaign. He's not talking about, you haven't seen Nicole Shanahan go on a podcast and say, we might support the Libertarian candidate because we want to break the two-party stranglehold. No, she said, we want to break the two-party stranglehold, so we're going to join the two-party stranglehold. That's what she said. So for me, I was like, this puts some things into perspective because there seemed to be a sense of urgency when it came to making these deals. So for instance, here in Florida, our state chair signed an agreement saying Florida is part of this JFC with RFK. And was later rescinded by the by the executive committee. So it's no longer an agreement. But this was pushed seemed kind of quickly. It seemed like there was a sense of urgency. Like, gotta happen. Don't have time to ask anybody. Right. Well, then we had the sense of urgency when it came to, you might remember the episode that I did where I was talking about the Libertarian Party of Florida making a bad vote to send a document to the LNC, Libertarian Party, and saying, hey, would you review the results of our election? Because we just want to make sure that Chase is the legitimate candidate before we go putting the effort into getting, ensuring that he's on the ballot here in Florida. Right. And that was presented to the Libertarian Party of Florida Executive Committee as something that was urgent. It was time sensitive. So one conspiracy with all of this is that maybe this was the plan all along. Go and collect a whole bunch of extra money and then dip out and go and support the Trump campaign, which would put everything that was presented as a sense of urgency into perspective. Now, I'm just speculating. There's no smoking gun here. It's not a guarantee. There are other equally valid conspiracy theories, such as I saw one where somebody said maybe what they're doing is maybe calling a bluff. They're bluffing. Maybe what Shanahan is really doing is sending a message to the Democratic Party saying, hey, keep messing with us. We'll effing do it. We'll drop out and we'll support Trump. How do you like those bananas? Right? So maybe this is a threat to the Democratic Party. And let me put up this ballot access map so that you can see. So here's the ballot access map that we have. And as you can see, Wyoming, Mississippi and Kentucky. And then I'm drawing a blank on the state up there, the tiny little one, and I don't have the hover, but Rhode Island, I think it is. And so it looks like about 4 states there, they don't have enough signatures, and then they're not on the ballot in New York. So they successfully lost in New York. So there's 5 states that they don't have ballot access in. And then the dark blue are the ones where they do have ballot access. They are on the ballot. And then the light blue where they have the signatures needed, but it's yet to be determined whether or not they will actually be on the ballot. So they're only right now guaranteed to be on the ballot in like half the states. And since you have a lot of light blue where they have the signatures and they're still working through the process, then I would posit that another conspiracy is that they're basically telling the Democratic Party, all right, you ruined it in not Florida, in New York. Don't ruin it in another state. Because if you do, we'll just simply drop out and we will push this for Trump and we will help you lose. So that's another conspiracy theory to think about. And then there is yet a third conspiracy theory. And that one is probably the most simple of them all. And that's that he's a run-of-the-mill politician. So let me go back to his Twitter comment there. Where did his Twitter comment go? Let me pull that back up here real quick. So we're going to go back to his Twitter comment. And here we are. So here's his Twitter comment. As always, I'm willing to talk with leaders of any political party, except for the Libertarian Party, because they never seem to be named, to further the goals. I have served for 40 years in my career and in this campaign. These are reversing the chronic disease epidemic. Okay. As a libertarian, I have no issue with reversing that, depending, again, how you do it. Ending the war machine. Totally on board with that. That's a big one for the Libertarian Party. In fact, there's not a single party out there that comes even close to wanting to end the war machine like the Libertarian Party. Cleaning corporate influence out of government and cleaning corporate influence out of government. Yes, libertarians would support that. They should be entirely separate entities, and the government should be tiny, very, very tiny. Toxic pollution out of the environment. Hey, we don't have a problem with that. Again, depending on how do you want to accomplish this. Protecting freedom of speech, always, and ending politicization of enforcement agencies. Well, we would just say ending enforcement agencies. That's what we would say. But it's a good start to ending the politicization of them. Sure, let's start with that. That's a good start. We wouldn't be happy with just that. So it's possible that he's just a run-of-the-mill politician who's doing whatever he can to get elected or to see his things through. And if that means dropping out and supporting Trump and saying, look, I'll support you, but here are some of my things that are really important to me. And you got to give me something that says you will help me forward my position on these matters. So that's another possibility. So we're at 3 now. We're at number 1. This is all calculated just to really support Trump in the long run. And it was just a big 4D chess. Number 2, it's a message to the Democrat Party. Hey, back up, or we will help push your candidate to losing. Number 3, he's a run-of-the-mill politician, and he just wants to get elected and doing whatever he has to do to win. And a win in his mind would be either winning the election or getting his policy prescriptions moved forward. And then the last one is not really a conspiracy, but I guess kind of. And that's just maybe they're just being honest, just plain old honesty. And it's kind of weird to think of that in terms of maybe that's a conspiracy, right? But maybe it is. Maybe everything that they're saying is just honest. And they're like, look, we're evaluating this. There's no craziness. We're just trying to do things differently because we've got this two-party system. We're not going to be able to beat the two-party system. We don't think that the Libertarian Party can help us advance our goals. So therefore, the only option is to, to go with the two-party system right now. And maybe, maybe the work we've done has kind of laid the foundation for a later run elsewhere. Right. And maybe while we're in there, we can influence to kind of break up some of the stranglehold of this two-party system. It's possible that they're just being straight up honest. I personally think it's probably just a run-of-the-mill politician. That's what I think. But it could be any of the 4. You have to let me know your thoughts. Let's see what we got in comments here. If we got any more comments that need to be addressed, let's see here. We got here. I'm just clicking on them. I don't even know what I'm not a lawyer, but if I recall correctly, 501c3 groups can largely launder funds from large donations. The LP's embarrassing leadership gets suckered on details like this. So again, I'm going to refrain from saying anything negative about our LNC, but I will say that I have seen a lot of things that highly suggest there is money laundering going on. I think there was a video. Who was it? Oh, what's the guy's name? I'm drawing a blank on it, but he's the guy that was the Project Veritas guy. But he was out a while back going door knocking and telling people, and he was like grabbing his phone and he was like, "Hey, are you Mrs. Jones?" And they're like, "Yes, I am Mrs. Jones." And he's like, "Did you give, $10,000 to Act Blue?" And they were like, "Well, I think I might have donated once, but I don't have $10,000 to donate to any organization. I would love to have $10,000. And then he would be like, "Well, it says here that you gave 50 contributions, totaling $10,000 or something like that." And they're like, "No, I only gave once." And so he was going out and showing that apparently somebody is making donations in the name of other people. And so that's what's going on. And so I've heard of things like that happening. I've seen races where the candidate that wins was pretty much guaranteed to win from the get-go. Like you got a Republican or a Democrat who wins by like at 70% of the vote in like some congressional district. And then you see that there was tons of money spent on phone calls and stuff like that. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Did those phone calls really give you that 71%? Or were you pretty much guaranteed to have a large percentage in the first place? And then what was all that money being spent doing? Was it, and so it kind of looks a little suspicious. So it's possible that there's a lot of money laundering going on. I would not doubt it. I don't have any smoking gun to say absolutely right here, but I've seen enough things to kind of make me question and say, well, that seems a little odd. Why do you need so much money for that? Right. So totally agree. Let's see what else we got in here. Yes, that's the name. James O'Keefe. That's his name. Thank you, that Liberty lady. And the oddsman, both of you chimed in, so let me know. But yeah, I saw that video. I thought that was interesting. I think there's something to be said about money laundering. I don't believe that the Libertarian Party is engaging in any money laundering. And I don't necessarily believe that the joint venture agreement that they made with the campaign is necessarily money laundering. I think he was just looking for a way to get even more money. So, because the fact of the matter is, at the president level, you need a buttload of money to compete. So I don't think there's any shadiness. There could be, but I don't think there's any particular shadiness in this deal other than the way that it went about and the fact that I don't believe the LNC or any of the state affiliates should have been involved in the first place, because I believe we are enabling our opponent to do better, and that we should not be doing that, right? Like, just plain and simple. It's a very pragmatic argument. You're enabling somebody to beat our candidate even harder. Don't do that. Plain and simple. All right, folks, that's my show for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found it informative and inspiring. Be sure to catch me Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. Eastern, for an informed discussion on politics and culture. And make sure that you are subscribed to my YouTube channel, or if you prefer, my Rumble channel, Rumble channel. You can go to youtube.libertydad.com, or you can go to rumble.libertydad.com. Remember, last but not least, if you're a champion of liberty, your business is people and your product is liberty. I want you to have a great week. Catch you tomorrow. But for now,